Hello, I'm Dr. Annadale, and in this video, I'd like to share with you a great history of philosophy visualization tool by the Turkish philosopher Deniz Ondugu. On his website here, The History of Philosophy Summarized and Visualized, he links to the tool, which I'll show you in a moment, and gives something of the history of its development. It's based mainly upon his notes from Brian McGee's Story of Philosophy and Thomas Baldwin's Contemporary Philosophy, and it is really a preliminary tool. It's not meant to be a final or definitive word on the history of philosophy, but it's very helpful for seeing in a convenient fashion the connections between different thinkers. Looks like it began here as a wall chart with pen and ink marks. So if I scroll back up to the tool, I will open it here. As we see, it's a long list from northwest to southeast of different thinkers with their dates and different doctrines listed next to them. Coming from each doctrine, we find green lines indicating agreement with other thinkers and doctrines, and red lines indicating disagreement or refutation or contrast. So to show you a bit of how the interaction works, I'm going to scroll out. We can take a look at the entire thing. It's massive. It starts all the way at Thales and Anaximander up here at the top and goes all the way down at the bottom right to Chalmers, Butler, Peter Singer, philosophers who are alive today, and some of their doctrines and lines of agreement and disagreement with them. To show you how this works, though, I'm going to scroll out with my scroll wheel and drag my way up to this part, a philosopher that we teach quite frequently in the classroom, Descartes. What we have listed here in this tool are 9 different doctrines attributed to Descartes. Let's take a look at the first one. In mathematics, we start from indubitable premises and deduce irrefutable conclusions. We see 2 red lines coming out of this, indicating 2 philosophers in the past with whom this is a claim that disagrees. When we click on it, it zooms in to tell us that this is a contrast with Zeno of Elea, who held that an impeccably logical argument can lead to a false conclusion, and also with Timon of Philus. If we click Show Further Connections, we get a second generation indication that Timon agrees with Pyrrho on this question. On the original doctrine, we have a bookmark. If we click it, it tells us that this doctrine is coming from McGee's Story of Philosophy. So if I click outside of the window, I come back to Descartes. Let's take a look at another doctrine. I may not know my own nature or the nature of things, but that I exist is indubitable. We click on it. We find agreement and disagreement, an agreement with St. Augustine, who held to doubt anything I must exist, and with Descartes' successor, George Berkeley. We know that we exist because we have direct awareness of our being, a subject of experiences, and a red line disagreement with David Hume, who held that introspection reveals just a bundle of sensations. The self as an experiencing subject is a fiction. Let's try clicking Further Connections. And what we find here at the second generation, zooming out a little bit, is that quite a few successive philosophers agree with Hume on this question. We find, judging from this tool, a great deal of agreement with Hume's theory of the self, not very much agreement with Descartes among the philosophers in this chart. So to take just a look at some of them, Fichte, we have experience of our existence not as knowing subjects by introspection, but as moral agents. Or Husserl, our awareness is of objects, but not of ourselves. His agreement with Hume might, combined with Hume's disagreement with Descartes, suggest a contrast between Husserl and Descartes. If I wanted to follow any of these down, if I want to know more, let's say, about Husserl's doctrine, I can simply jump over to that. I can find the source there. Is also McGee's Story of Philosophy. Husserl agreeing not just with Hume, but also with Sartre on this question. And the bigger picture emerging out of this. Clicking outside the window again to zoom out. Get back down to Descartes. Let's try this last one. There are 2 kinds of substance: mind, which I am as a conscious being, and matter. Looks like some agreement A lot of disagreement on this. When I click the doctrine, I can see agreement with ascribed to two doctrines of Plato, disagreement with everyone from Occam down through Spinoza, Conway, Leibniz, Berkeley, and the rest. This is helpful just on a purely visual level to see that this apparently is quite a controversial claim on Descartes' part that has been rejected by many of the major philosophers coming after him. In different ways, of course, with each one. Berkeley and Spinoza disagree with Descartes on the nature of substance in quite different manners. So there's a great deal of potential, I think, here for clicking through the different doctrines by different thinkers and following out the connections between them. You can discover quite a bit about how things are structured in the history of philosophy. Spinoza's denial of dualism looks like it has a great deal of agreement among successive thinkers, including ones in the 20th century, disagreeing with some dualists from before, according to these notes from this tool. So, I think that's a tremendously useful tool for students of philosophy, especially if you want to know something about a philosopher that you're approaching for the first time. You might ask yourself, what are the fundamental doctrines of Leibniz and how do they line up with other thinkers? Notice not all the doctrines here have lines of connection, so that's something important to notice. So we can find out something about Hutcheson and how Francis Hutcheson's moral theory lines up with the theories of other thinkers in modern times and ancient times. So that's my quick look at this data visualization tool. I hope you find it useful. I'll put a link to it in the description below. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.